Hey guys, it's Rachel. It is Friday. I didn't get to upload a video yesterday. My cat has been really poorly, still is, so I've kind of been distracted, and also I had a meeting with my old psychiatrist therapist on Wednesday, so it's kind of been not a busy week necessarily, but a few things have gone on that have been quite difficult to deal with. But I'm going to put the video up today, and we're going to look at crisis really. Last week we looked at the impact of losing somebody very close to us with regards to either the death of somebody, terminating therapy. I spoke about leaving inpatient services, you know, when for whatever reason you've been let down, or if you've moved and you've had to change services, friendships, all that type of thing, when things can move on maybe. And actually some of the feedback, which is a testament really, I guess, to having amazing friends, was that in fact it was sort of having a friend move away or something like that that was a very big trigger and a very difficult thing. And it certainly was in my case as well, because I was ill at a time when everybody was going away to university, and so I lost all of the connections. Though I isolated myself anyway, I lost a number of those connections. But today, when they're talking about crisis, they've been, I think some of the girls are probably going to discuss some of the things that have gone on in New York. I have no idea what it's like to be in a situation where there has been an earthquake or a hurricane or anything like that. The closest we come to it here is our roof leaking, but you know, I've been fortunate. I mean, I know stuff does happen in this country because we get a ridiculous amount of rain, but I've never experienced anything like that, so I don't have any means of telling you anything or advice to give you, because I've actually never been in that situation, or been relocated or being asked to move or whatever. What I thought I would look at, and that's, let me see if I can remember the three things I want to go through the video. Let's see if I can do it. Okay, I thought we could look at crisis in terms of a crisis point, being a crisis in the sense of having a period of time whereby you go into crisis and maybe you're under the crisis team, home treatment team. I'm not always fortunate to get those services, so maybe you're seeing somebody like your psychiatrist more, your care coordinator more, those types of things. I've had brief experiences with working with the crisis team working for me, I guess. So I thought I could talk about that. Crisis, what was the other thing I was thinking? What I'll do is I'll talk about that first, and then as my brain's kind of ticking over, we'll see if I can remember. So it isn't uncommon to go into crisis. It can be in our recovery, it can be when we've been recovered. I've been recovered, I don't know how long now, but this summer went into crisis. For me, a crisis is a period of time which is incredibly intense. I think people can be in a state of crisis for a really long time, and yet it's not necessarily defined as that. So say the period where I was most ill with my eating disorder, you could say that I was in crisis the whole time because I was putting myself at risk, or I was having very, you know, destructive thoughts and all the rest of it. But in terms of a period of crisis, for me, it's never normally longer than 3 months or so. This summer was my depression getting very severe, and so it was a case of dealing with that crisis. The crisis being how low I was, and how impossible it was really to get me to move and get out of bed and all the rest of it. So that was considered a period of crisis. quite often other people's periods of crisis are when they just hit a point when they're just like, I can't deal anymore, and maybe behavioural use massively increases. If you've not used behaviours for a long time because of your recovery, it's a period when you do use them, maybe a lot more intensely, even a lot more destructively, a lot more dangerously. It's a period whereby it's a period whereby you may need more. You may need more in the sense that you need your parents around you more, you need family around you more, you need friends around you more, you need access to more services, you need more support. You may go into hospital for a period of time. I've been taken into hospital, say 2-3 weeks at a time, just to get me through a period. And that crisis point really, for me, as terrifying as they can be, and as fortunate as I feel to have survived it, it is a time of great learning as well. And I'm not going to say I didn't have any appreciation of life before I got ill. Of course I did. But, you know, you come through these things and you learn from them. And I think that that's a really important thing. I still judge myself to this day. And, you know, I'm in a degree of denial, I will admit to that, about some of the mood issues that I've got. But that's predominantly because I've worked so hard to recover from my eating disorder and my self-harm, that to somehow admit that I still have problems with my mood is a very, very difficult thing for me. It is very, very difficult. And that I should maybe follow a certain structure, routine, etc., when I just want to be myself, when I just want to be the Rach who I am, who's come out of all this illness. So that can be a crisis point. And maybe some ideas dealing with that are your usual distractions. I mean, you know, I have sort of in the back of my head, they're kind of ingrained, and maybe you want to write them down, and the things to do, you know, when you're struggling. So you pick up your art book, you put on a DVD that is your favourite DVD, even if you just stare at it. You could write, you can, it depends where you are, it depends at what degree of crisis you're in, but it's finding means of distraction and allowing others to help you through that crisis. Okay, so that's crisis point where things may rapidly deteriorate very, very quickly in a way that puts you in a state of crisis, but it doesn't mean you're going to stay in crisis. The other one I was thinking about was actually, there we go, yeah, crisis in terms of, I'm going to talk about my dad's redundancy because that might seem a strange one to think of as a crisis, but it's happened twice before. And as a family, it's something that impacts you greatly. There's no doubt about that. I very much recall the first time my dad was made redundant and seeing him cry for the first time and feeling this huge sense of fear for him, not for us as a family, not because I didn't think that we could get through it, not because I didn't think things would be okay, but this understanding that we needed to have this to bring us together as a family, that we needed to be strong together. And, you know, thinking things as silly as, you know, if I gave them my pocket money, you know, my 20p's and all the rest of it, would that help? That was a very disruptive time. It meant that my dad was meant to either take a job. I'm going to actually sit down. Hang on. Oh, it was that my dad was either going to take a job in America, or he was going to take a job in Scotland, and we ended up moving to Scotland. But I remember how difficult that was, because if he was to go to the States, I was going to continue to be educated over here, and I was going to go to a private boarding school. And, you know, all of those things for a family, the stress they put it on, and maybe me and my brother were too young to completely remember. We moved to Scotland when I was 9, so he'd have been 6. But that choice, that realisation I was going to be moving away. I'd lived in the house we were in since I was like 3. So it was going to be a massive shift. It was going to mean, you know, moving schools and everything, and leaving behind friends that really were amazing friends. And I think we're going to look at that next week, actually, if I'm correct, that we're going to look at changing schools. Sorry, I just can't get this laptop right. It's driving me nuts. There we go. And yeah, at the same time, it was incredibly exciting, but there was this constant kind of fear, you know, of where we were going to live, how were we going to eat, how was this going to be. Fortunately, my dad moved to a job that was far better paid. There was a lot of excitement about the house, but then he was made redundant 9 months later after we moved there. So then we had to move back to, fortunately, the old house. And I had to start again, and maybe I actually think that that's something that'll be really good for me to pick up on next week, actually, going back to school and all the rest of it, the same school. And it was a really difficult time. It was a difficult time, and it was very, very hard, and it's impacted my dad ever since. And I guess that my parents did an amazing job at keeping everything together, because we came out of it okay, you know. The one other thought I had for a crisis, had another thought. No, it's not going to come to me. So I'm going to actually leave this video, which has been really disjointed, and I do apologise for that. And I will be with you next week, and I'll get this uploaded. Okay, bye.